You wake up at 6:10 in the morning, a few minutes before the alarm sounds. It is not willpower. It is not motivation. It is habit. Your body learned this rhythm after more than 10 years of waking at nearly the same time, making the same rushed breakfast, driving to the same job. You stare at the ceiling in silence, and your mind repeats the same justification that has carried you for years. It is a good job. It pays well. It is stable. It has benefits. And not everyone gets this opportunity. And all of that is true. But something still does not sit right. You earn more than your parents ever did. Yet you live with a constant sense that the money is never enough. That one unexpected expense could throw everything into chaos. That tension is not coincidence, and it is not ingratitude. It is exactly what Proverbs describes when it warns that mismanaged wealth brings no peace to the soul. God never designed work to be a permanent source of anxiety. It was meant to provide sustenance. And when sustenance creates constant fear, something is out of alignment. This is what I call the paycheck prison. Now consider Marcus. Marcus is 36 years old. He has a respectable career, a stable employment history, and earns close to $90,000 a year. From the outside, his life looks successful. He has a nice apartment, a reliable car, and enough income to enjoy a few comforts. But every 14 days, when Marcus gets paid, reality looks very different. His gross paycheck is about $3,450, but after taxes, health insurance, automatic deductions, and transfers he no longer questions, what actually hits his account is just over $2,600. So far, nothing seems unusual, but here is the real problem. There is never a true moment of control. The Bible warned about this when it said to know well the condition of your possessions. Marcus money does not arrive to be managed. It arrives already assigned. He never gets a clear moment to say, "This is what I have, and this is how I will steward it wisely." Instead, the money is automatically divided. Rent takes the largest portion. Food and eating out take another. Car payments, insurance, and fuel take another. Subscriptions and utilities take the rest. By the time Marcus finally looks at his account, nearly all of his income already belongs to someone else. He has very little room to save, very little room to invest, and almost no room to breathe. This is the opposite of biblical stewardship, which requires intention and authority, not reaction. The most dangerous part is that it does not feel like poverty. Marcus does not feel broke. He has comfort, stability, and everything appears fine, and that is where the trap hides. Proverbs warns that both lack and abundance, when mismanaged, can pull us away from purpose. The modern system understands this perfectly. It does not take everything from you. It gives you just enough to keep you compliant. Money comes in as one large deposit and leaves in dozens of small transactions. Your mind never fully registers the loss, You do not feel trapped. You feel tired. You do not feel desperate. You feel drained. At some point, something changes. Not a promotion, not an opportunity, but awareness. You realize repeating the same cycle and expecting peace makes no sense. If this video is helping you see what you could not see before, type this in the comments. I choose to exit the paycheck prison, not as a slogan, but as a decision to stop living on autopilot. Now let us talk about what keeps this system running. From a young age, you were told the path was simple. Get educated, work hard, get a good job, and climb steadily. Many people went into debt believing freedom would come later. But the moment income increases, something happens almost no one questions. Lifestyle expands at the same speed. You upgrade your apartment. You upgrade your car. You raise your spending because now you can. Proverbs warned about this when it spoke of appetite that is never satisfied. The problem is not income. It is adaptation. Every raise feels like progress, but often it is just a higher cost of peace. You earn more, but now you need more. This is where the trap becomes dangerous. You are no longer free to say no, because your lifestyle depends on that income. Scripture says the borrower becomes a servant, not just to the lender, but to the system that demands constant payment. This happens at every income level. Someone earning $300,000 can be just as trapped as someone earning $40,000. If their lifestyle requires constant inflow to survive. Income does not create freedom. Margin does, and Proverbs makes it clear. Security is not found in amount, but in wisdom. Let me tell you about Daniel. Daniel works in technology. He earns 6 figures. From the outside, his life looks impressive. But inside, he lives with constant anxiety. Any thought of leaving his job tightens his chest. Not because he lacks skill, but because his life is tied to a large mortgage, 2 car payments, and expenses that cannot pause. When he received a promotion, he felt relief. But within weeks, expenses rose. Unexpected costs appeared, and the stress returned. Just as Ecclesiastes says, whoever loves money is never satisfied, because the issue is not income, it is structure. Here's the hard truth. When you live paycheck to paycheck, even with a large paycheck, you become predictable. You cannot take risks. You cannot invest in ideas. You cannot slow down and think, because every dollar is already spoken for. Jesus explained this clearly. No one can serve 2 masters. When money becomes your source of safety, it stops being a tool and becomes a ruler. Now ask yourself honestly, if you lost your job tomorrow, how many months could you maintain your current life? If the answer is 1 or 2, that is not security. That is an illusion. Proverbs says the plans of the diligent lead to abundance. But living without margin means living on the edge. That is not peace, and it is not God's design. The paycheck prison tells you this is normal, that this is adulthood. that the solution is always more work and more income. But Scripture never calls that the goal. It speaks of stewardship, preparation, rest, and freedom. Change begins with better questions. Not how do I earn more, but why does everything disappear? Not how do I climb higher, but what am I building? First, stop confusing income with wealth. Income is temporary. Wealth remains. Second, protect margin, even when the system pressures you to spend. Third, use margin to build reserves and assets, not obligations that tighten the chains. Most important, build options. When you have 3 to 6 months of expenses covered, something shifts. You stop deciding from fear and start deciding from peace. Proverbs says, "The blessing of the Lord brings wealth without sorrow." If your success comes with anxiety, dependence, and constant fear of collapse, that is not blessing. That is a decorated cage. The paycheck prison is real. It is subtle, but it is not permanent. Those who escape are not smarter. They simply became aware. They understood that comfort is not freedom, and chose intention. You can do the same. If this message strengthened you, subscribe to Divine Finance Principles, turn on notifications, and join us weekly, because here we do not just manage money, we surrender it to God faithfully, fearlessly, and with purpose.